Doctor, thank you so much for joining. Are you well?
Asia, thank you for having me. I'm good.
Good, good. Let's start with something from outside. Boris Johnson. So he's now going to be the leader of the United Kingdom. Should Africa be worried or should we be smiling?
I think it's a good development for them to have such a person. The thing we have to know about Mr. Boris is that he has a great academic background. He studied very well. Particularly, he studied classics. And in classic, you study about the history of Greek and Latin. And when you have such a kind of background, you have an understanding of a Eurocentric perception of what Africa meant and what black people. You know, there are many tweets and some allegations about him that he has some misconception about the African continent. Yep. In some instances, he had to apologize. He had contact with Helen Zeller, the premier of the Western Cape. Yep. I see him as someone that has a perception about Africa that is not so healthy. Being a foreign secretary of the United Kingdom sometime around 2016, he visited some countries, including South Africa, Gambia, etc. His perception about Africa is not so positive. But the good thing we need to understand is that there are people that say things, they don't implement them when they become leaders. Yeah. So he is one of those that I think we need to sit up well, understanding that whatever policy he comes with, Africa is on the reactive section. So we have to wait and see that when Africa reacts based on what he will like this and develop. For South Africa in particular, he was a leader mostly during the time of the former President Jacob Zuma. But now we have Mr. Ramaphosa. So let's see how it will go. And then whatever policy he comes up with, and then Africa is going to react. Yeah. But we need to understand finally again that at this time there are changes in Africa. It's not every time that a policy that comes from outside that people just receive it easily. Sometimes some people confront it. So let's see what he will come up with, and let's see the policy that, the level of reaction that South Africa will take, particularly on the issue of land without compensation, the taking of the land without compensation.
Is that quite a few patronizing remarks about Africa, including calling Africa, the whole of Africa, that country? Okay, now, Doc, let's talk about a particular country next to us here, Zimbabwe, where surprisingly, one of the courts there, a high court in Masungo, has had a ruling saying the national broadcaster did not represent the divergent views and dissenting opinions when it came to their handling of the last election that was held in that country, this is very new for Zimbabwe, isn't it? And are there consequences to this?
Yeah, it's quite unfortunate. This is how governments influence not just the media in certain African countries, but even the justice system. They listen to the tune of the government, and when they give report about the last election in 2018, there was bias, and they seem to favor the ruling government at that time. And the concern is that the judge, Justice Joseph, did not actually announce what are the implications for it. He just only advised that it looks like he advised that in future we should make sure that different opinions are being heard. Yeah. Let's not just listen to one. But if it were in other places, probably there should be some consequences. Yeah. But at the moment, there seem to be no serious consequences on this. Yeah, and that is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, it will always be a challenge in that country. Yeah. Okay, let's go to South Sudan now, where that government has expressed concern, obviously, because the information minister there, Michael Makwei, has announced that President Salva Kiir has banned anyone from singing the national anthem unless he is present. What on earth is that about?
Many countries have rules about their national anthems. There are some countries that you're not allowed to paraphrase or to use it as a music that you need to sing. And then for this one, they're in particularly saying that if the president is not there, the anthem should not be sung, except in schools and maybe in Sudan embassies outside of Sudan. It's unfortunate. They have one of the best national anthem, which an anthem should be important in terms of paying allegation to your nation. and not particularly the president, but pay an allegation to your nation.
Yeah.
In this case, whereby the president has to do this, it looks like he's shifting attention more onto himself, and this is not good for the distant continent and for the country as a whole.
Is the peace deal that was signed about a year ago, is it holding in South Sudan?
It's always temporary. It doesn't look like it will stand. The problem is that particularly Salva Kiir seems to be so interested in this power that we remember the deal he had with the former distant vice president.
Yep.
You know, it's not holding. It's not holding properly. People are still suffering. I mean, the conflict, the ethnic tension is still high there. So what I suggest need to be done is to discourage anything that will give so much power to decentralize power to from the president. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go in East Africa now. Yoweri Museveni, he's been in power well over 30 odd years now. The election's coming up in 2021. Bobi Wine, who's a pop star in Uganda and has ruffled the feathers of the ruling party, was actually jailed at some point and so forth. There's had so many clashes with the government there. He's decided to run for the presidency in 2021. What are his chances, and should Museveni worry at all?
This is interesting because if we can have young people that can consider participating to the point of becoming like a president, it's very interesting. And there is no guarantee that because you're young, you'll be a good leader, or because you're old, you'll be a good leader. But it will make the politics robust. So I'm happy that Bobi Wine developed the interest. It's very difficult. It will be going to be very difficult for him to win. Why? Even though he have the youth vote. But the thing is that the government industries, or I mean the government agencies like the Election Commission, etc., are being controlled by Mr.
Museveni.
Yes. You see, I mean, somebody who was able to change the constitution of the country. I mean, Article 102, subsection B, whereby they now remove age limit. So which means he can stay as president as he wants. But the fact that a young man is coming to challenge him is good. He may not win in the first stage, but it would create a polity, it would create a standard that no, something has been, an election was conducted and the election was wrong, and these are the reasons why it says it's wrong, like the case of this in Zimbabwe. So it's good for him to give a try.
I mean, look, if you look at the population of Uganda, it's 70% youth. That's reflected across the whole of the African continent. There's many, many young people. And then you look at the leaders in their 70s. That surely can't continue.
It's very unfortunate that young people are not involved. Have a look at the president of distant France. I mean, look at his distant age. But in Africa, it is quite different. But when we have people, look at the case of distant people like Malema that are just, they are distant coming up. I mean, they changed the structure of the parliamentary system. I mean, things have been changed there. So if we have people like Bobi Wine, he's already a member of the MP. If we have him to contest, it's a good thing. Let's encourage the youth. But these people at the moment, they are not ready. Yeah. Youth should support youth, I think.
Well, we'll see what happens. If it's a free and fair election, that's critical. Just a quick one for you. I want to get your response. Is the African Union responding adequately to the Ebola challenge in the DRC? Do you think?
It's not so adequate. They are just putting some effort, but it's not so adequate. So we rely mostly on Western support at the moment.
It's very unfortunate. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Jock Matthew Agai, joining us talking about African issues from Uganda all the way to South Sudan.